They planned Thanksgiving without me, after I prepaid every dime. Name's Clayton, 45, used to carve the turkey. Now I just carve receipts. The cranberry smell still lingers on my canceled catering invoice. Ever sent a surprise no one asked for, and made sure they'd never forget who paid for it? What would you have done? The family group chat was alive again, blooming with orange leaf emojis and so excited for Thursday messages. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. No one asked why, no one asked me anything, really, not anymore. It had been like that for years. They never told me anything outright. They just let things happen. Quietly, like always. If I was meant to find out, I'd stumble across it eventually, through a forwarded email, an Instagram post, or in today's case, a series of cheerful messages I wasn't included in, but could still see. The afternoon was calm in Cincinnati. November calm. Damp air, gray light stretching in from the windows. Leaves curled at the edges, swept into clusters along the curb outside. In my kitchen, the kettle had cooled, but the steam from my Earl Grey still kissed the air, clinging to the rim of the mug. The laptop on the counter blinked with one unread notification. I opened it. Family group text. The message preview read, "Got the squash casserole ready? Amanda's bringing pecan pie this time. Hope Sean doesn't forget the sparkling cider." There was a familiar warmth in those lines, a rhythm I once belonged to. They used to loop me in on everything, from the type of napkins to the playlist. Now, it felt like a sitcom I'd been written out of, but no one told the audience. I clicked in. The messages were endless. "Y'all, can't wait for Thursday. Got the new centerpiece? It's a pumpkin made of wine corks. LOL. Sean, don't forget the charger for Mom's tablet. She wants to play her games." Nothing tagged me. Not even a "Clayton, you in?" or "Can you bring something?" Funny thing was, the catering? That was on me. Always had been. I paid for it before Halloween, as usual. The invoice had come through my inbox, addressed to Clayton Reeves, and I'd paid in full, $3,128.44, covering the entire spread for 15. I even added the sweet potato option Amanda liked and upgraded the pie selection because Sean's kids complained last year. I opened the email again. The subject line was clear. Thanksgiving catering confirmation, November 23rd. Below it, the full menu. A note. Thank you for your advance payment. My cursor hovered over the attachments, all accounted for, all prepaid. I minimized the window and opened the receipts folder. There it was. Thanksgiving 2023 catered confirmed. Beneath that, Reeves Family Holiday Expenses.xlsx, color-coded, clean, just like I liked it. I knew where every dollar went. They didn't ask. They never do. I stood there for a while, unsure if it was disappointment or the dull fog of familiarity settling in. I took another sip of lukewarm tea. Maybe it was both. I called Sean. It rang 3 times before he picked up. "Hey man," he said, upbeat. Background noise. Kids, maybe. "Everything okay?" "Just checking," I said, keeping my tone light. "Did something change with Thursday?" A pause. "Oh, yeah, about that. Mom just wanted it really low-key this year, like bare minimum. You know how she gets about crowds." "She does?" I said. Another pause. Yeah. We figured we'd just keep it small, keep it quiet." "I see," I replied. "Thanks for letting me know." He mumbled something about the weather. Then, "Gotta go. Hannah's climbing the bookshelf again." "Sure," I said, and hung up. I didn't get mad, didn't ask questions. I just opened a blank folder on my desktop and typed in the name, Things I Didn't Say. Inside it, I dragged the invoice, the receipt, the spreadsheet. Then I picked up my phone and called the catering company. The line rang once. Then a woman answered. Cheerful, Midwestern. Hi, this is Melanie with Harvest Table Catering. How can I help? Yes, I said, calm as a lake. This is Clayton Reeves. I'm calling about an order for Thanksgiving. Invoice number 38,477. Yes, that's scheduled for Thursday. Delivery at, 11:45 a.m. for the Reeves family, correct? Correct, I said. I'd like to cancel the order. A beat. Oh, I see. I can certainly help with that. Would you mind sharing the reason for cancellation? Change of plans, I replied. No longer needed. She paused, then softened. All right. Full refund issued to the original card, Mr. Reeves. You'll receive confirmation shortly. Thank you. I ended the call. The kitchen was quiet again, save for the humming of the refrigerator and the click of the heater as it adjusted to the cooling afternoon. I walked back to the laptop and opened the group chat one more time. Amanda had just added another message. Clayton never even RSVP'd. Classic. I stared at that line for a while. Then I scrolled upward. Through every pumpkin, every pie, every LOL, every casual jab disguised as charm. I didn't type anything. Didn't leave. Didn't delete a word. I just read every message and let them sit there, like they wanted, like they never thought I'd see. Before I pulled the plug on dinner, I ran the numbers. I always run the numbers. It's not a habit, it's muscle memory. Some people pray, I calculate. Tuesday bled into Wednesday like watercolor. By mid-morning, Cincinnati was wrapped in light drizzle. The kind of gray that doesn't feel dramatic, just resigned. I moved from the kitchen into my home office, just 10 steps, but a different world. Order lived here, labeled folders and drawers, shelves with uniform binders, a large second monitor beside my laptop, already glowing with columns and cells waiting for purpose. The file was already open. Family contributions, Clayton Reeves. It wasn't petty, it wasn't revenge, it was record-keeping, and frankly it had been overdue. Cell A1, recipient. Cell B1, purpose. C1, date. D1, amount. E1, status, paid back. F1, notes. I scrolled. It began in 2013. Amanda Reeves. Wedding vendors. June 2013, $5,800? No. Said she'd pay once she got her bonus. Sean Reeves, tuition, fall semester. August 2016, $4,100. No. Emergency registration. Venmo never came. Linda Reeves, mom, roof repairs, March 2019, $9,000. No. Said house value would make up for it. There were 38 rows. Every line carried a different shade of gratitude. You're a lifesaver. We'll never forget this. We got you next time, except next time never came. What came instead was this Thanksgiving. The unspoken, unwritten erasure of me. Rain tapped steadily on the window, a rhythm, a metronome to the quiet. I opened the digital folder labeled Family Support, Originals. Inside, scanned PDFs of invoices from Amanda's wedding planner, screenshots of tuition payments, even a photo of the roofing contractor's receipt taped to Mom's fridge back in 2019. I clicked through them like a slideshow of someone else's generosity. Then I found it. A voicemail from Dad. October 2014. Don't keep score, son. His voice rasped, aging but clear. But don't forget either. He died 2 months later. Complications from heart surgery. I didn't play that message often, but I never deleted it either. It was the most honest advice he gave me, sandwiched between silence and sacrifice. Back on the spreadsheet, I added a final row. Clayton Reeves, Thanksgiving Catering. November 2023, $3,128.44. Cancelled. never acknowledged. I leaned back in my chair. My spine creaked louder than the chair. That's what 46 feels like sometimes, like your body has a backlog too. I opened iMovie, dragged in screenshots, PDFs, photos, that picture of Amanda in her dress, Sean grinning outside his dorm, Mom standing in front of her newly shingled roof. I added the dates in the lower right corner of each image, crisp white text on black background. I pulled the audio from Dad's voicemail, let his words play over a still frame of our old backyard. Don't keep score, but don't forget either. The video wasn't long, just under 4 minutes. I didn't add music, just quiet transitions and subtitles. No drama, just data with memories. At the end, white letters faded in over a background photo of last year's Thanksgiving table. Napkins folded into little turkeys, my handwriting labeling every dish. Thanksgiving, sponsored by The Invisible. I exported the file and uploaded it to my private YouTube account. Set the visibility to unlisted, copied the link, opened the Messages app. The cursor blinked in the recipients field. I hovered my fingers over the keys. Sean, Amanda, Mom, even Aunt Rachel, who never contributed, but always took leftovers in Tupperware. I typed each name in carefully, not in anger, just in clarity. Then I scheduled the message. Thursday, 2 p.m., right when the turkey would be carved. Right when the family would probably start their toast, the part where someone would say, "We're just so thankful for each other." They wouldn't be expecting me. They wouldn't even notice I wasn't in the room. But they'd notice the message. They'd notice the silence that came after. I leaned back, let the weight of it all settle. My office smelled faintly of paper and lavender oil from the diffuser my ex once bought. I liked that about her. Small comforts. Things that don't announce themselves, but make a space gentler. Outside, the rain began to ease. Inside, my screen dimmed. The video sat in its thumbnail preview, paused on that photo of the table, with a single empty chair at the end. Mine. At 1:58 p.m., I reheated lasagna in the microwave. 2 slices, layered from a half pan I'd made the night before with leftover mushrooms and ricotta that was on its last forgiving day. I plated it with a small side salad, still crisp in its bag. Nothing festive, just efficient. At exactly 2 p.m., I gave them the turkey they'd forgotten came from me. My phone vibrated once on the table, then stilled. The scheduled group message had gone out. Happy Thanksgiving. Just in case you forgot who covered the meal. Beneath it, the unlisted YouTube link. I didn't need to watch the views rise, I just needed the quiet that followed. The fireplace hissed beside me, not the snapping kind of fire you see in commercials. This was older, deeper. I'd split the wood myself 2 days ago, just to feel something heavy give way beneath my hands. Jazz murmured low from the Bluetooth speaker on the bookshelf. Bill Evans, I think. Or maybe someone who'd once played beside him. The vinyl crackle was artificial, a Spotify setting. But I liked the illusion. My street was quiet. No cars parked in front of my house, no cousins carrying pies or aunts shouting over car alarms. Downtown Cincinnati always emptied on holidays. I could have heard a squirrel blink if it had dared. Back on the phone, the message started to breathe. Seen by Amanda. Seen by Sean. Seen by Mom. 3 little red receipts. 3 kinds of silence. At 2:03, Amanda replied, "WTF is this?" The kind of message that's typed fast enough to forget punctuation, but just angry enough to add the exclamation. I imagined her thumb stabbing the screen, wine glass in the other hand, still seated at a table full of dishes she didn't realize had been uncatered. At 2:05, Sean called. I let it ring. At 2:06, he called again, straight to voicemail. At 2:07, my phone buzzed with a voice message from Mom. I let it sit for a moment. The screen glowed, then dimmed. The lasagna was warm now. I sat on the couch, fork in hand, took a bite, and waited for the right place in the music to pause. Then I tapped play. "You embarrassed us," her voice trembled in that practiced tone, the one she saved for church bake sales, and when Amanda used to forget to RSVP. "You've always been dramatic, Clayton, always needing to prove something, even on Thanksgiving?" Click. That was the end of it. No mention of the food. No mention of the $3,128.44 I'd charged to my card, with zero reimbursement. No mention of me not being there, just offense. As if truth had shown up uninvited and tracked mud across the family rug. I stared at the voicemail notification for a few seconds. Then I deleted it. Silence, I've found, is the loudest answer you can give. But sometimes, just sometimes, you owe yourself a final word. Not for them, but for the part of you that used to apologize for breathing. So I typed. It was a gift. You just weren't ready to unwrap it. I didn't wait for a reply. Didn't watch for the 3 little dots that might indicate someone was crafting their comeback. I closed the laptop, slow and deliberate. The kind of movement you make when you're sealing something. Not a device. An era. Outside, a leaf skated down the driveway, landing near the storm drain. The last ones clinging to branches looked thin and tired. November was that way. A month of shedding. I leaned back into the couch, felt the cushion adjust beneath me. My body, for once, didn't carry the tension of a guest in his own family. I wasn't worried about who would forget the cranberry sauce or who would fake dietary restrictions for attention. I wasn't wondering where I'd be seated or if my chair would quietly vanish between RSVP and arrival. I had a front row seat to exactly what they'd become without me, and I didn't miss the table. Not the folding chairs, not the undercooked stuffing, not even the annual forced gratitude speech where someone would say, "We're so thankful for family," and no one would look in my direction. The lasagna was good. The cheese had browned in the microwave. Not quite crispy, but close enough to feel earned. I let each bite linger. I wasn't rushing to join any moment outside this one. When the phone buzzed again, I didn't look. Let them stew. My cousin Jay sent a photo just after sunrise. No caption, no emoji, just pixels and implication. The table looked perfect. Gold-rimmed plates, white linen napkins folded into triangles, candlelight flickering against half-filled wine glasses. Everyone was there, arms mid-toast, heads tilted with exaggerated joy. And near the end of the table, between Uncle Marty and the dessert tray, was a space. The same space I used to fill. There was a folded napkin where my plate should have been. I stared at the photo longer than I meant to. Zoomed in once, twice. Amanda wore burgundy. Sean was slicing a tart. My chair, or the one I always brought from the garage when we ran short, was nowhere in frame. I used to carve the turkey. I used to refill the rolls. I used to bring the extra chairs. Now I was the extra chair. Friday mornings are always cold in Cincinnati, but this one felt like it bit deeper. The sunlight came in at a slant, half-hearted through the frosted windows. I'd left the curtains half-drawn the night before. Not for aesthetic reasons. I just couldn't be bothered. In the fridge, a half-eaten slice of pumpkin pie stared at me through plastic wrap. I didn't remember putting it there. Maybe I hadn't. Maybe it was from last week. What did it matter? Then came the email. Subject line. You were right. From Aunt Brenda. I hesitated before opening it. Aunt Brenda wasn't the tech-savvy type. She still printed recipes, Still left voicemails that began with her name and ended with, "Okay, love you. I'll try your cell next." The body of the email was short. "You were always the one holding it together. Some of us saw it. We just didn't say it. We thought staying quiet was staying neutral. But it wasn't. I'm sorry. I hope you're okay." I read it twice, then again. I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen while the notifications began to trickle in. "Amanda, you made everything about money. That's not what family is supposed to be." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. She started typing again. Stopped. Amanda again. "That video was manipulative. We all said thank you, just not every single time." I didn't answer. I let the silence do the work. A few minutes later, Sean texted. I should have said something, but you know how Mom gets. I didn't respond immediately. I folded a towel from the laundry basket, then another. I watered the spider plant by the sink, dumped out the stale coffee grounds, and wiped down the counter. Then I sat down and replied, "I know. But why didn't you?" 10 minutes passed. No response. 15. Finally. "Because it would have made things awkward, and you seemed fine. You always seem fine." The words sat there like a half-deflated balloon. It's incredible, the assumptions people build on silence. They confuse it with stability, as if not reacting means not feeling, as if a calm tone means you're okay being erased in increments. I typed back, "Silence is how people get erased." I didn't hit send right away. Instead, I sat there and let the weight of that sentence settle over the morning like fog. Because it was true, not dramatic, not petty, just factual. Erasure isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like forgetting to mention someone. Sometimes it's remembering, but choosing not to say. The message sent with a whoosh. Across the room, my phone buzzed with another notification, this one from Facebook. Someone had tagged me in an old photo. Thanksgiving 2016. We were all crammed onto the porch steps, balancing styrofoam plates. I was holding Amanda's baby, grinning. There was gravy on my shirt. The caption read, "Throwback to when we did it big. Miss these days, hard eyes." No one had commented yet. I didn't either. Instead, I closed the laptop and picked up the folded napkin that came with last night's takeout. I ran my fingers over the crease. It wasn't linen, but it held its shape. People like to pretend that gratitude lives in words. Thanks. Appreciate it. Couldn't have done it without you. But words without memory are just air. And I remember everything. The receipts, the favors, the phone calls that started with panic and ended with, "You're the best," the driveway shoveling, the 3 a.m. rides, the compromises, the skipped vacations, the wine I didn't drink because someone had to drive Mom home, the jokes I let slide, the birthdays I paid for, the furniture I moved, the silence I gave them in exchange for peace. And now? Now they were uncomfortable. Now they wanted it to be not about the money. Now they needed the narrative to shift, because if it didn't, they'd have to face the version of themselves that let this happen. I stood up and opened the fridge, took the pie out, removed the plastic, cut a slice and plated it, sat down and took a bite. It tasted like cinnamon and cheap absolution. By Sunday morning, I was packed, not out of anger, not out of some grand gesture, just clarity. 1 suitcase, not even full, 1 manila folder, 1 USB drive with 3 versions of the same video, unlisted, backed up, compressed. I left the key under the mat for the neighbor. I'd text her the details later. The CR-V's engine came to life without complaint. 47 degrees. Overcast. Wet pavement. I backed out of the driveway I'd shoveled 12 winters in a row, glanced once at the front porch, and drove toward the on-ramp. Cincinnati blurred behind me by mile 20. They say people don't change. Not really. I used to believe that. But I think what's more true is that we stop presenting ourselves to those who never saw us clearly in the first place. You don't change. You just stop trying to convince. Interstate 75 stretched out ahead like a ribbon of forgetting. I drove with both hands on the wheel, radio low. Jazz, then silence, then static. At a rest stop outside Lexington, I pulled over for coffee and a stretch. The sky hung low and silver. I unlocked my phone. There were no new messages. None that mattered anyway. One from Amanda. A link to some GoFundMe for a coworker's dog. No caption. One from Cousin Jay. Hope Florida's nice. And one from Mrs. Lanky, the neighbor across the street. Hope you're okay. Saw the video. Thought it was brave. We miss seeing your car. That one made me pause. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was ordinary, kind, unperformative. I typed back, "Thank you, I'm just taking a little drive." Then, without ceremony, I opened the family group chat, scrolled once, twice, stopped at the photo of the Thanksgiving table again, the folded napkin, the missing chair. Then I deleted the thread. No warning. No confirmation prompt. Just gone. The silence that followed was clean. Somewhere past Atlanta, I remembered a voicemail from my dad. Saved since 2014. I'd just moved into this house back then. Paid the down payment myself. Everyone had said it was too much space for one person. The voicemail had come after a Thanksgiving when I'd shown up late, tired from work, and Amanda had made a comment about me choosing career over family. Dad had said, "If they stop seeing you, son, don't shout. Just step away." That's louder. It had never felt more true. I replayed it once, then archived it into a folder labeled Keep. I crossed into Florida by sunset. The Airbnb in St. Augustine was a small white cottage near the edge of the ocean. Warm porch lights, pale blue shutters, a folded towel in the shape of a swan on the bed. Luis, the host, handed me the key with a smile and said, "You came alone?" I nodded. "Best way to travel," he replied. The place smelled like lemon and old pages. A bookshelf near the window held a hardcover titled, "Leaving is an Act of Trust." I didn't unpack much, just the laptop, the folder, the USB. I opened the laptop and wrote a group email to the family. Subject: One last gift. Thank you for the years I was needed. I hope they brought some comfort. I won't be home for Christmas, or after. Wishing you all well. I attached the video link. The same one. No edits. Hit send. The sound of the ocean was faint but persistent, like breath you didn't know you were holding until you finally exhaled. I brewed a cup of black coffee, sat by the window, watched the wind play with the palm fronds. For the first time in years, no one knew where I was. It wasn't rebellion. It was restoration. I read a page from the book on the shelf. Something about how distance doesn't erase. It reframes. Sometimes you have to get far enough away to see the outline of the thing you were inside. I let that thought settle. The next morning I woke up to a ping. New message. From Sean. Can we talk? There's a kind of silence that follows disaster. Not ominous, not echoing. Just earned. I used to flinch at quiet. Thought it meant something was wrong. A lull before impact. A sign of exclusion. Now, it just means no one needs anything from me. And that, I've learned, is not a loss. It's a shift. Mornings in St. Augustine come slow and blue. The waves roll in with a cadence like breathing, and I've started matching mine to them. I walk along the beach with a notebook and no plan. The ocean doesn't care who you used to be. The Airbnb turned into a monthly rental. Luis offered it with a shrug and a smile. People find themselves here, he'd said, or they finally stop looking. I sip dark roast from the cafe down the street. Mismatched chairs, walls lined with old postcards, names scratched into the wood by people who used to be strangers to someone. My phone rarely vibrates now, and when it does, it's rarely from the people I once waited on. One email stood out this week. Subject: Thank you. From someone named Danny. No last name, no photo. I saw your video. That was my family too. I just wanted you to know you said what so many of us feel, and that matters. You matter. I didn't reply. Not because it didn't deserve one, but because sometimes the message doesn't need to echo. It just needs to land. I closed the laptop and walked to the cafe. Luis greeted me with a nod and slid a second cup across the counter before I could order. On the house, he said. You're one of the good ones. I didn't argue, just smiled and sat in the corner by the window, the one where sunlight paints the floor golden for exactly 40 minutes. That's when Amanda's name popped up on the screen. Hope you're happy. You broke Mom's heart. No greeting, no bridge, just weight tossed like an anchor. I didn't read the rest. Didn't need to. I tapped delete and watched her message vanish into digital ether, where all the old guilt used to live. Then, an email from Sean. Subject: Sorry isn't enough, but it's a start. I knew you were telling the truth. I just didn't want to admit I let it happen. I thought staying neutral meant staying out of it, but I see now that silence took your place at the table. There was more, memories, attempts to explain, but I stopped there. I replied with one sentence. You still have time to choose differently. That was it. I flipped open my notebook and jotted a few lines about the tide, about the way some waves curl in soft and vanish like they were never there, and others arrive roaring and still leave no mark. Luis wiped a nearby table. A young couple walked in, mid-argument, about whether mashed potatoes should be whipped or chunky. She said whipped meant love. He said chunky meant effort. I smiled. Whipped, I muttered under my breath. They didn't hear me, but that wasn't the point. Luis leaned behind the counter, gave me a sideways glance. You're the guy from that video, right? I looked up. There was no malice in his voice. No awe either, just a question. Neutral. I nodded once, then said, I used to be. He just smiled. The bell over the door jingled as more customers came in. A teenager laughed too loud. A man ordered decaf, but meant espresso. The radio played something old and soft. Outside, the world didn't notice that I wasn't part of their Thanksgiving. It didn't ask me why. It didn't expect me to explain. And I didn't owe anyone a seat I had to beg for. I left the cafe a little before noon, notebook in hand, coffee in the other. No voicemail, no demands, no apologies I hadn't already made to myself, just a breeze off the ocean, and for once, silence that didn't sting. The ocean breeze carried no judgment, only space. In the quiet, I finally found what years of trying to be enough had never given me. Peace. Sometimes, walking away isn't about anger. It's about no longer apologizing for loving differently, or for asking to be loved back. Families break not from honesty, but from the silence that lets unfairness grow roots. If this story reminded you of something in your own life, feel free to share it below. Sometimes, speaking up is the first step to healing, even if you're only telling your story to yourself.